Good evening, friends. Today we are going to continue with our psychology lecture conducted earlier. So, in the last lecture, we have seen that psychology progressed through these perspectives. S for structuralism, F functionalism, P psychoanalytic approach. Then, as a counter current emerged humanistic psychology and your cognitive psychology. In between, behaviorism. Behaviorism kept its dominance over psychology till now. From the time it emerged through the Bratish approach of Watson, propelled by Pavlov and Skinner, it remained in force, in vogue, and it's being practiced even now. So, behaviorism is one of the most important forces of psychology which shaped the discipline for a very long period of time. Despite the fact that as a counter current to the deterministic approach, overt behavior approach, that is, psychology should be studying only the overt, observable, measurable behavior, and it should not focus at all on the internal processes, mental processes, was vehemently opposed by psychoanalytic approach propounded by Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud said, and his disciples also, those who believed in psychoanalytic and psychodynamic approach, psychodynamic is nothing but a branch of psychoanalytic approach where they not only say that the unconscious forces are important, but they give respect to the consciousness as well. That's the major difference. So, psychoanalytic perspective said that no, we should not be studying only the observable overt behavior, but we should focus on internal processes as well. And in fact, Sigmund Freud said that the behavior is primarily determined, even the personality of the person is primarily determined by the psychic forces, psychic determinism. Also called biological determinism, psychic or biological determinism. Early childhood experiences and id forces determine our personality, and as we progress through several stages, oral, anal, phallic, latency, and then genital. As we progress through these stages, there is a resolution of psychic conflict. Which is nothing but a conflict between id at one side and ego and superego on the other hand. If we are able to resolve the conflict in a positive manner, that is, it is able to balance itself, with the forces of ego. That is, ego says that this is the reality. You cannot behave like a uncontrolled bull. Superego says that behave, this is a crowd, you cannot run like this. Id is the bull, driven by sexual urges and the innate tendency to display aggression. So this bull is tamed by the reality. In between id and reality comes ego. And superego tames the id by saying that these are not the moral values. You should not run like this. This crowd is representative of the society. This is our bull. Id. This is the crowd. Bull wants to crush the crowd. Ego says no, don't do this. There will be lots of people injured. You may also be killed. Superego says this is the crowd. Crowd has its certain norms. How can you just keep on running like this? So, because of these, there is a balance between id forces and ego superego forces on the other hand. Id forces on the one hand and ego and superego forces on the other hand. Because of this balance, there is conflict resolution. Resolution of psychic conflict. If the resolution does not take place, then there is psychic fixation. And due to this fixation, our personality suffers from one or the other handicaps. Like, suppose there is oral fixation. People suffering with oral fixation, where? When the pleasure center was mouth, they were either overfed or underfed. In that case, what will happen? They will remain fixed at that point. Even now, they seek pleasure. How? It is prevalent in form of some people you might have seen. The poo-poo approach, they are chain smokers. This is nothing but a display of oral fixation. If you go by the psychoanalytic approach, there are people who have verbal diarrhea. They keep on speaking. They keep on speaking. What? Oral fixation. So, Sigmund Freud came as a force to define another perspective in psychology, determining force in psychology in form of psychoanalytic approach. But like behaviorism, psychoanalytic approach had its own limitations. Like, psychoanalytic perspective was primarily dependent on biological determinism, that we are defined by our biology, innate tendencies, the pessimistic nature, of human beings, which was reflected in psychoanalytic perspective. And in fact, it was quite dehumanizing. To define human beings in this manner. Human beings being defined in this manner like according to the psychoanalytic perspective, They are saying that human beings are nothing but दो पैर के जानवर. Like animal instincts, we also have animal instincts, and like animal get satiated if you provide them food, shelter, their sexual urges, if they are satisfied, then they will be very happy. So this tendency, seeing human beings like this, gave rise to an undercurrent. Under the leadership of Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow. In form of humanistic psychology. Humanistic psychology. As the name suggests, unlike the psychoanalytic perspective, it is not seeing the dark nature of human beings. It is not focusing upon the deterministic and pessimistic approach. Unlike deterministic and pessimistic approaches of psychoanalytic perspective, deterministic approach of behaviorism as well, because behaviorism was based on environmental determinism. Against these two forces, environmental determinism, biological determinism, and pessimistic nature of human beings, came humanistic perspective. And humanistic perspective says very unique and interesting things. That human beings, that human beings should be seen as a whole. That is, human beings cannot be reduced into parts. Their experiences cannot be reduced into parts. The reductionist approach which structuralists followed, structuralism, and behaviorism also, structuralist and behaviorist both followed reductionist approach. Behaviorists said the complex behavior can be reduced into small parts and then can be studied experimentally. Then we can know what changes in the environment determine those responses. The stimulus in the environment determine the responses there. Likewise, the structuralist says, let us study the structure of conscious. Both these approaches are reductionist, elementalist, molecular. Whatever name you suggest, they all mean the same thing. These are nothing but English words. But humanism says molar approach. What is molar? Molar approach which Gestaltists will also follow. And let me tell you one thing, that from humanism, Gestaltists were also inspired. Gestalt psychology finds its origin in humanism because of its molar approach. Humanism says, why are you seeing the human beings by dividing, reducing their experiences into smaller elements? Let's see the human beings as a whole. That is, if there is an elephant, we should not. Have you heard that story that there is an elephant? A blind man is first of all kept near the tail of the elephant, The blind man touches the tail and says, okay, it's something like a string. Then the blind man touches the feet of the elephant and says, there is something like a pillar. Likewise, different body parts of the elephant are defined according to what the blind man is able to see. But there came another current which says, no, this is not the way to see. Let's not put the blind man, let's have a man who can see. Integrative approach. Where the elephant will be seen as an elephant as a whole, not as a sum of its parts. And as we see the elephant as a whole, or the experience of human being as a whole, is not equal to sum of its parts. Suppose you go to watch a movie. You see movie in parts. First, before the interval, the half part. Then half part before the interval. Then after the interval, half part. Then you sum it up. What kind of conclusion you will make? Will be faulty. This is the approach which was being followed by behaviorist, by structuralist. Structuralism and behaviorism were following the same approach. Behaviorism was doing one of the major mistakes by bringing the environmental determinism also, that everything is defined according to the changes in the environment. We don't do anything, we are like animal. We react to the environmental changes. We react to the environmental responses. But the humanists say, no, first of all, change yourself, change your perception. And by the way, the perception word itself got birth from a humanist psychologist, humanistic perspective. They say every experience of human being and human being themselves and human mind, in fact, should be seen as a whole, not as its parts. Then human mind first thing, human mind should be studied as a whole. Secondly, every human being is unique. Every human being is unique. We cannot say that each and every human being and their experiences can be broken down into parts as a sum of responses in response to the stimulus or change in the environment. That is a generic approach which does not work with the human beings. So, everybody, every human being and their mind are unique and they should be seen as a whole. This is called molar approach, non-deterministic approach, non-pessimistic approach. Then, second tenet which they gave was human beings are driven by will. Free will. They do what they feel like doing. That is, Meri Marji. What I feel convinced about, I'll be doing. They are just not dependent upon the consequences and responses. If that is true, if only responses and consequences would have defined our behavior, why would people do daring things Why would somebody go and climb Mount Everest? Why would they conquer fear? Because the reinforcement is negative there. Why would somebody prepare for a harsh exam like UPSC, which is driven by uncertainties, which is driven by hard work, where you must sustain for a larger period of time studying? What motivates you? There comes motivation. So, when there is the role of motivation, then it is free will. It's the will. It is not deterministic. It is not determined by the forces outside our system, but it is determined by our own free will. And every human being behaves in a responsible manner. Responsible manner. That means that firstly we take our action according to our own wish. If we will to do it, if there is a will, there is a way. There is a saying that will comes from this humanistic approach. And when we do something, we take full action, full responsibility of our actions. That is called a positive approach towards human being and their actions. We take full responsibility. That is, we are doing, the action is being initiated by us. We are responsible for its consequences. We are responsible for its consequences. We have taken the action, consequences we see, and we are responsible for it. We are preparing for civil services, doing our hard work. We are responsible for our results. That is positivist view. Firstly, human mind is unique. Then human experiences and human mind should be studied as a whole. Then every human being is born with a free will. Human beings behave with a free will, not determined by their biological. You may be having so many urges right now, hungry, feeling like going outside, but still you are attending the classes because you have a will to attend the class, because you know the consequences are going to be better. Or you are motivated to attend the class because you like psychology or the psychology lectures. In this perspective only, let us take an example of delayed gratification. What is delayed gratification? There was an experiment done by Marshmallow. This is called Marshmallow experiment. Again, the name is not important. What is important is your understanding of the experiment. What is happening in this experiment? There are two groups of children. As you know, there are two groups where there is a control group and experimental group. In control group, all the children were given same kind of reward. That is, all of them were distributed sweets. In the experimental group, children were asked to choose whether you want one chocolate now or after some time you want, along with the chocolate, some other rewards, a toy as well. I'm just making changes in the experiment just to make sure that you understand the context of the experiment. tampering with the original design. So these children were asked, you have a choice. Few children, even in the same age group, they chose chocolate along with the toy at a later period. When longitudinal study was done, and what is this longitudinal study? A study which is done which covers the extended length of life, that is, children are tracked, their progress are tracked. We'll do this in developmental psychology, but here also the reference can be taken. Of course, the development of the child is tracked from child to adulthood or later. When the development of these children were tracked, longitudinal study of the children who opted for chocolate along with the toy at a later period of time rather than having chocolate at that point of time itself, instant gratification, as some people who are hungry or thirsty, they want instantly satiated, they want themselves to be instantly satiated, not waiting for a longer period of time. What happened to these children? Those who opted for your delayed gratification in the longitudinal study, they were shown to be much more successful as compared to the children who wanted instant gratification. Instant gratification, that is, they want satiation right away. In place of that, longitudinal gratification. Longitudinal study said that delayed gratification children, they were having much more success. Although there is no cause and effect relationship here. What is the focus of our experimental study? Cause and effect. And when we have objectively, pinpointedly done this cause and effect study, then only the experimental study is supposed to be scientific in nature. But when we are doing this study, here cause and effect cannot be ascertained. Certainly, it cannot be ascertained, but a correlational study, these kind of studies are correlational, where a correlation is made. What is the correlation? Delayed gratification is related to success in life, because delayed gratification is an indicator of emotional intelligence. The more the delayed gratification a person has, the more emotionally intelligent the person is, and that is an indicator of success. There is no cause and effect relationship, of course, but a correlation of high degree can be ascertained here. And mind it that most of the studies of psychology are based on these kind of correlation, because exact cause and effect relationship cannot be ascertained, unlike natural sciences. Fine. So the second tenet was free will approach, not determinism. We'll move to the third tenet. Here we were doing the free will approach. Every human being is driven by the free will, and they take full responsibility of their actions. So from there came our delayed gratification example. We are taking the responsibility of our consequences, as shown in the delayed gratification. As you are also following the delayed gratification, because you are doing away with lots of pleasures of life. In this ripe age, when you could have done many other activities which many of your colleagues, many of your batchmates, many of your friends might have been doing. But you are foregoing all these, just studying for your UPSC examination with a vision and dream in mind that I have to be much better than these. One day when I pass the exam, these are the same people who will come to me, एक मेरा काम करा दो, एक कोई फाइल पास करा दो, somebody is disturbing me, just make a call. These kind of authority you will be having later on. Delayed gratification. We are driven by such things, not instant gratification. As behaviorists said, according to behaviorism, if you are hungry, you will immediately ask for the food, because earlier when you asked for the food was available. They are not completely wrong, but human beings are driven by certain other things. They choose their responses consciously. Then the third tenet, a third important principle of humanism was, unlike psychoanalytic perspective which said that human beings are driven by dark forces, they are born with innate tendencies to satiate their needs of sex and aggression. They are animals. The humanistic perspective says, no, that is not true. Human beings are inherently good. Human beings are inherently good. They are driven by the positive approach to achieve the highest form of their individual potentialities. To achieve the highest form of their individual potentialities, and that is called self-actualization. Self-actualization. They are not driven by basic needs, they are not driven by the esteem needs, as Maslow said. These are your basic needs. These are your esteem needs. This is self-actualization. As Maslow says that you go through a hierarchy. If your basic needs are fulfilled, if you are not hungry, not thinking about any particular physical comfort, then you will be driven by a need to have a social esteem need, your social influence, how confident you are about yourself, self-esteem, your self-esteem gets a boost or not, your social esteem, your social image is improved or not. Once you achieve this, then you are driven towards actualizing tendencies. That is, you are now working to achieve the highest potentials you are born with. As nowadays, many people are saying, be the best version of yourself. And we all should aspire to be this. Be the best version of yourself. Everything else is farce. If you are driven by this motivation that I have to be the best version of myself, then you can see the wonders happening. You will be driven by an energy because you don't know your limits. The humanistic perspective says that you are born with the tendencies to achieve the highest human potentiality. And what is the highest human potentiality? That is limitless. That does not have any limit. Human will has no limits. Human will cannot be curtailed, as we have seen. in form of courage of army people. We have seen what human beings, even if they are not getting any reward, they keep on helping people. They are driven by their dreams, their visions. Self-actualization. People have the tendency to move towards self-actualization. Maslow's take as far as self-actualization is different, but what humanists say, humanist perspective in general, is that every human being is driven towards self-actualization. They have the tendency to achieve their highest potentiality. Then the fourth tenet, which is very important, is that, see, what behaviorists said, what we see outside, we just report that. We see outside the window, it is raining, and we say that it's raining. Now, you put three different people, three people. One is a bureaucrat, another one is a scientist, and there is a poet. They all look outside the window and they say, it's raining, but in different manners. The bureaucrat says, it's raining and I have to reach to the meeting. Committee people are waiting for me, there has to be an umbrella. It is his or her perspective. The scientist says, this is not the season of rains. Why it is raining? There is a climate change now. The poet says, what a beautiful day. With a warm cup of tea in my hand. The rain, it's rainy outside. I get reminded of a company which I had 10 years ago. Poet has his or her own way of expressing things. Poetic. The reality here is objective reality. And what is objective reality? It's raining. As simple as that. It's raining outside. But what is the subjective reality? It depends on the person. The poet has a different perspective altogether. Some people who don't like rains, they will say, now what will happen? I'll get drenched. I get fearful of rains. So it's their own version of reality, that subjective reality. And this subjective reality, mind it, subjective reality is much more than the objective phenomena what is happening there. Now this, and we have already seen the molar approach of humanistic perspective. The molar approach in the humanistic perspective, and here when they say that subjective reality is much more than the objective reality, these two indicate towards an important perspective in psychology itself, that is called your Gestalt approach. What do Gestaltists say? They say first, molar, the experience as a whole is much more than sum of the parts of it. The holistic experience is not a mere arithmetic sum of smaller parts, but it is much more than that. First, it is molar. The whole is much more than sum of its parts. These two things, molar approach, not a molecular approach, seeing things as a whole, and understanding that when you see things as a whole, the sum of its parts is very minimalist. The sum of its parts is not going to define the holistic experience. The holistic experience is much more than the sum of its parts. Gestalt approach. So humanistic perspective gave way to Gestaltist approach, Gestalt psychology. Then within Gestalt many other things came. We will see when we are doing perception where it is more relevant. Doing it here is not important. So let's move to our another tenet of your humanistic perspective, fifth tenet. What is the fifth tenet? The fifth tenet is very important because it gives rise to this use. Psychological well-being. The aim of psychology should not be to define the behavior in a reductionist way. The aim of psychology should be to ensure psychological well-being of people. What is psychological well-being? Psychological well-being, when we talk about psychological well-being, it is positive psychology. What does positive psychology say? Because positive psychology, mind it, is very important. From positive psychology only, community psychology, educational psychology, counseling psychology, all were born. Because positive psychology is a movement in itself. Because what it says is very important and remarkable. It says there are two ends. At this end are people who say that they don't have any disease. Lack of disease. At the lower end, rather have a better picture here. This end is your lack of disease. You don't have any disease, that is, you are not suffering from BP, hypertension, diabetes, or any other form of suffering. But at this end are people who say not only that I am free from the disease, but even if I have the disease, my perception is that I am well. All is well approach of Three Idiots, all is well. At this end are people who are not only looking at the lack of disease. At this end, people will be saying, I am fit, I have no problems. These are the people who will say, why to go to gym? I don't have any problem. These are the people who will go to the gym only when they get lot obesity. But at this end are the people who regularly go to gym to keep themselves fit. They know that going to the gym is important, or rather doing any other exercise. If you are playing any sports, it's better. If you're doing swimming, that's much better. In fact, any cardio activity is important for your heart. So, lack of disease people on this end. But at this end are people who focus on positive emotions. Here, the people are having lack of negative emotions. Lack of negative emotion. You go into a cafe, you see different types of people. And this is the beauty of studying psychology. There are people who are stone-faced. Their face does not give any emotion. They don't have any negative emotion, neither any positive emotion. There are people, if you look at their faces, you can see that there is a surge of positive emotion inside them that can be reflected in their laughter, the way they laugh, the hearty laughter, the emotions reflected on their faces, positive emotions. You can see the difference. Lack of negative emotion, lack of disease is not our focus. The focus of humanistic psychology is to ensure positive emotions. Not only the physical health, but psychological health as well. You know what is psychological well-being? Psychological well-being is you are fit and you perceive that you are fit. Your perception of being fit. Perception of being fit. There are people, if you look at them, they are very fit. They are fit like anything. Especially it happens in youngsters, college going youngsters. You will encounter people, you will see people who are college going, who are fit. But still, they are running towards that zero figure approach. They are not worried about their health, they are worried about their looks. And from there stems the fact that lots of them are suffering from anorexia. They eat something tasty because they cannot stay away from tasty food and then vomit it out because it should not affect their body. That is, they don't want to store any kind of fat. Same approach nowadays. Keto diet. Keto diet. Only protein. You see, this has relevance in today's life also. You have to connect things with the today's life. What is happening? Only protein diet. Protein shake, protein shake, protein shake. Protein shake, gym protein shake. What will happen to your liver, buddy? One day your liver will say, sorry, I can't take it anymore. I need fat also. I need nutrients also. Although I look very fit from outside, but the whole body is crumbling. Steroid approach, protein shake approach. There is no harm in taking protein, but take high protein diet along with that. Take all the nutrients. You know what is happening? Psychological well-being is not there. People I have seen, they are so good, so fit. Going to the skin clinics. At one of the skin clinics, I found the then Delhi commissioner's wife was there. So I had to go to meet someone there in the same building. There was an office. By chance, I knew her, so I had a conversation with her for quite some time. I realized that she has no issues, no problems at all. But still, she is sitting there because she is not psychologically well. Psychological well-being. The humanistic psychology says, accept yourself as you are. And now this movement has also taken lots of ground. Accept yourself. You see, nowadays, the YouTubers, you see these YouTubers, Kusha Kapila, these are the people who say, oh, whatever my figure is, whatever my physique is, I'm okay with that. I have skin problems, okay. I have these problems, okay. I can deal with it, I'm okay with it. This is the approach we should all have. Nobody is perfect. The idea, and why I'm saying so, because later on we'll deal with it, the idea of moving towards perfectionism. This brings distortion in your real self and ideal self. This is your ideal self. This is your real self. There is incongruence. The larger the larger the incongruence between these two, the more is the stress, the more is anxiety within you, the lesser is the self-esteem and self-confidence to do something. More shy you will be from the people around. You see how relevant this perspective is. And because of this positive approach of humanistic psychology, which focuses on positive psychology, it gained a momentum, which focuses on positive emotions. It gained a momentum, and later on it gave birth to community psychology. And it gave birth to counseling psychology. To a large extent, a lot of this affected the education psychology as well. You see the difference here. Later on, what happened? Because of this approach, it affected abnormal psychology also. And when we deal with abnormal psychology, you will realize that the way abnormal psychology, social psychology, the statistical part, your applied psychology, the way it should have been dealt, it is not being done, without any offense to anyone at all. Because this discipline, abnormal psychology, is such an interesting thing. Not technical at all, but you can get the vocabulary from the material which I will give you. From our discussion, you will realize. And how humanistic psychology affected abnormal psychology, because now we started talking about, mind it, non-directive approach. What is non-directive approach? As it was asked also this year in paper 2, non-directive therapy, not directive therapy. We as a therapist don't believe that in front of us is a patient. No patient. In front of us is a client. This is Sarkari Haspatal approach. This is private hospital. Few months back, I had some problem with my lower back. So I went to a hospital, one of the best hospitals in the vicinity where I live. There I had to wait for the doctor for quite some time. He was the director of the physio department. So within the waiting time, the kind of magazines they had put there, they served me one of the best coffee. Then I remember having gone to a government hospital, lots of crowd, no regard to the person. Treatment should take place in this direction, client approach. So the humanistic psychology says CCT approach, client-centered therapy. The client knows what is the best for himself or herself, because they are driven by humanistic presumptions. They are not directive like behaviorists. They will not give you shock. They will give you counseling. That, see, this is the difference. This is the problem with you. You are driven by rigid beliefs, and that is why these problems are occurring. You are not able to handle the stress. This is the way to handle, but you are the best judge of yourself. You should define your own strategy. They believe in the client. Same approach. We will take a parallel example in education. There are teachers who believe in the student. Yes, student can do the best. We will give the precise material. will direct the student towards a strategy. Student I is intelligent, but there are other people who say no, students are not intelligent. They have lesser IQ. That's also one of the realities, harsh realities. They say they have lesser IQ and they are unable to cope with the complexity of the discipline. I say no. This discipline is not so complex. It's a simple subject. It can be taught with simplicity. And this is the hallmark of a genius, to bring simplicity in the discipline. So client-centered therapy is like this. Simplify things. Tell them you are the best judge for yourself. We have full belief, full faith in you. Please tell your perspective. Then just mildly tell them in an indirect manner, not direct manner, that this might be the problem. Please look into this. The client may change the lifestyle, may change the behavioral dimensions, and then may become all right. I had the opportunity to meet one of the psychiatrists recently because a distant relative was facing some issue. So this old aged man, having experienced many patients with such disorder, was very calm and composed. He said that this is just a problem of your thinking. You'll be all right. Although he prescribed medicines, he said that go through the counseling. Psychiatrist will give you medicine and he will tell you to go to the psychologist who will do the counseling. Because once the psychiatrist has done the diagnosis, then you go to the therapist, go to the counseling psychologist. They will devise which counseling is better. And this is important. You must know the hierarchy. You must know the protocol. This may be asked, and this may help, especially those who are preparing for NET exam of psychology. This process is asked sometimes, the real practice which is done. So from directive approach, where they were treating people suffering from disorders as patient, they were being treated now as client. This approach was directive, here it is non-directive. So humanistic psychology has a huge impact. Humanistic psychology brought so many new concepts like self-actualization, like the definition of self itself, which we'll study in personality and then in social psychology. Again, in social psychology, I'll tell you, because my sources are authentic, original, and very well placed. So the filtered material which I provide you is top quality as far as conceptualization is concerned, does not give you unnecessary details at all. So this perspective of self when we'll deal, the Western self versus Indian self, the application of self, evolution of self, the meaning of self and its significance as far as your attitude is concerned, and how it does affect the interest and values. This all will be done in attitude, value, interest chapter as well. So overall, the humanistic psychology perspective was quite idealist in its approach. Idealist. Although they had done a major breakthrough, they were idealist. They gave new concepts, sometimes very ideal kind of concepts, which did not have any experimental validity. And world over, the various disciplines, including psychology, were now reeling under a new revolution. And when I say revolution, what does it mean? There was a revolution called cognitive revolution. What happened under this revolution, which gave birth to cognitive perspective? The intellectual people like Noam Chomsky started adding value to the perspective of psychology. There was discovery of computers. A new discovery it was. Every discipline got shaped because of this discovery and intellectual value addition. The experts started looking at psychology from a different perspective altogether. They say the aim of psychology should be cognitive perspective. What should be the aim of psychology? To study how people think, perceive, and process information. See, the major focus is on how people think, perceive, and process information. What are they drawing corollary with? The parallel is being drawn from computers. Here is a computer. The input in form of sensory information as we get. The information is processed, perceived, stored, the information is processed, perceived, stored, and then finally retrieved. Whenever required, we recall that information. This is how human cognition works. Cognitive psychologists drew a parallel between human mind and computers. And as computers take the input in form of information, they process it, perceive it, they take out the meaning of it. Finally, they store the information, and whatever you need, just at the push of a button, they will give you the information. Likewise, the sensory information comes, it is processed by our mind, perceived, we make a meaning of it. Then it is stored there. Then whenever required, we use it, retrieve it. Process, perceive, store, and then retrieve. Process and perception, they take place in one go. There may be simultaneous or successive. Different thinkers have different approaches, which we will see in our study of intelligence. Content theories, process theories. So, we will take an example. What is the application? See, you meet 100 of people. From a particular state, say from Bihar. You meet 100 people from Bihar. You find certain traits in them. They may be blunt, intelligent, hardworking, some of them criminals also. Too much interest in politics. Politically so sensitive state. These are the traits you gathered about a person from. Your mind is storing information. These are the information. Your mind is storing information. First of all, they are processing it, perceiving it. To perceive, what you do, as you all know, we are all cognitive misers. We are not capable of handling so much of information in an analytical manner. So what we do? We generalize. So we'll see that which patterns are getting repeated again and again. Suppose hardworking. Most people you find from this state are hardworking. They are politically sensitive. These two patterns are repeated again and again. So your perception which you built regarding people from this state is they are hardworking and politically sensitive. Now, you have stored this information after processing and perception. Then when you meet a new person from Bihar, you will use this information. You will also perceive this person from Bihar as hardworking, political. What have we used here? We have used a technique called heuristics. Shortcut, mental shortcut. Heuristics is not a rocket science. Heuristic is nothing but mental shortcut. Heuristic. We have used the heuristic because we cannot process all the information everywhere. So, according to the heuristics, and which heuristic in that? Availability. Because the information available in your mind, the highest percentage of people you have met from Bihar are like this. Availability heuristic. We'll do that later on when you are reading heuristics. But you see what you have done here. The person whom you met was not hardworking, a lazy person. Does not know anything about politics. What happened here? You used this prejudice. You are prejudiced. You prejudged the person. As simple as that. You had certain belief about this category. You prejudged the person. The person did not come out as like this. So there is a connection between your cognitive psychology and social psychology also. Whatever cognitive psychology suggests has an application in social psychology. This is how we can simplify the process. So moving ahead with our tenets of, this was just to give you a sense that the concepts of cognitive psychology have application in social psychology also, and whether it is cognitive or social, this is not rocket science, it is simple. It will be simplified for you, no need to worry. So the basic tenets of cognitive psychology. As you know, cognitive psychology draws heavily from the analogy with or parallelism with the computers. So first was that Mind receives, processes. This was the first tenet. Mind receives, processes, perceives, and stores the information which is retrieved later on. The information which mind received, processed it, perceived it, stored it, is retrieved later on as and when required. This is the activity. And as cognitive psychology says, our focus should be on how we think, how we perceive things, how we process information. That is our study focus. This is the first basic tenet of cognitive psychology. Second tenet is, that is second principle on which cognitive psychology works, is experimental and computational methods should be used. Cognitivists say we should not be driven by our perceptions or our understanding of human being in a subjective manner as done by humanist psychologists. They had a subjective understanding. When Maslow said that people move in a gradual way from basic needs to social needs, esteem needs, then to your self-actualizing needs, he was just making an assumption. There is no scientific experimental validity to these theories. When Rogers says that we have a self, the incongruence between real self and ideal self brings incongruence and stress in our personality that is also based on subjective assumptions. The cognitivists say, no, we are into the era of cognitive revolution. We must study everything through experimental method, and along with the experiments we must use computers, computational methods, so that to give universal validity and universal laws, which was not done in humanistic psychology. So, experimental methods and use of computational mechanics. As we are saying in now it has become quite apparent and quite useful. AI, artificial intelligence, especially the generative AI, generative and regenerative, in form of what? ChatGPT and NLP, natural language processing, NLP. These are the innovations. ChatGPT, generative and regenerative AI, it can generate things for you. It uses the creative aspects. If you look at and if you have used ChatGPT, you will realize that there are two versions. In one version there is traditional answer, precise limited answer, and the another version gives you creative answers. Although the creativity of ChatGPT is quite limited as compared to the human being's creativity because of the inherent design, and ChatGPT uses data till 2021. It has not been updated beyond 2021. That's also a limitation with ChatGPT. Apart from the fact that We have also dawned upon the era of natural language processing, where the robots are now using language and emotions. Which were hitherto the department of human beings only. We have dawned upon that era. How experimental methods were included in cognitive psychology? We will see that cognitive psychology gave birth to the tools like Stanford Binet or Simon Binet intelligence test. These tests were standardized methods reached through the experimental method of studying intelligence when they gave the deviation IQ. Normal people falling in this zone, 67% of the population within one standard deviation from the average IQ of 100. These were based on experiments. The corollary with computer, I have already given you the example. And mind it, cognitivist perspective is not only called a perspective, but it is called cognitive revolution, because they revolutionized the complete understanding of psychology in form of these innovations. So the second tenet was, the cognitive psychology says we must use experimental methods and computational mechanics to validate our theories. It should not be based on observation. They don't say that we should be believing on qualitative methods. What was qualitative method? Survey, interview, case study, questionnaire. Rather, we should believe on statistical method, quantitative. We should move towards quantitative methods. Can you see that the reflection of behaviorism is there? Behaviorism, which was vehemently opposed by the psychoanalytic perspective, and then the humanist has again made its appearance, because they are also talking about quantitative approach, the experimental approach, which was the hallmark of behaviorism. So everything which goes up will always come down. And behaviorism, despite the fact that it has lost its face for quite a long time, again made its reappearance. Its experimental tenets, the basic tenets got reflected in cognitive revolution as well. An intelligent examiner may ask you this question. And if you have a basic understanding of the concepts, you can always answer this. Moving on to the third tenet of cognitive revolution, the third tenet is, as we have already seen, what should cognitive psychology study? Nothing. The syllabus of UPSC. You see, the syllabus of UPSC mentions sensation, attention, perception, thinking, problem solving, intelligence, language, communication. These are all the departments of cognitive psychology. This is what the basic tenet is. The cognitive psychology should study these things, which we already have to study because this is in the syllabus. But one thing is that cognitive psychology is not the only part of psychology. Please give respect to other parts of psychology also, so that we pass the exam. And the children who are told that you have average IQ, they also score 300 plus. Under the vision of teachers like us, who believe that everybody can get 300 plus if they are trained in the right manner. So, third tenet done. This is just to say that what all should we study. We'll study these all chapters separately. Then, A most significant aspect which the cognitivists said, which is remarkable and which will give you an idea about one of the major debates of psychology, is cognitivists say that, see, behavior or the study of mind is not only driven by environmental forces. They say this: behavior is heredity into environment. That is, our behaviors, the way we think, our thinking process, our ability to solve problems, our intelligence also are not defined by the changes in the environment alone, but our genetic endowment as well. How have we matured? What genetic influence we have upon our personality? That also defines our behavior. That also defines our cognition. Although, you see, different constructs have different proportion of heredity and environment. As we'll see, for has lesser influence, which we'll see in development psychology, the twin studies which were done by Bouchard and McGee. Bouchard and McGee, they did a longitudinal study. In this, they realized that okay, there is no major doubt, just some discussion about Jim is there. So, Bouchard and McGee, when they studied that children, identical twins and fraternal twins, now you don't need to study the whole table, but identical twins are 100% genetically similar, mirror image of each other. Their genetics are quite similar. Both of them are same. They even look alike. Their gender is same. Identical twins. Fraternal twins, the genetic similarity is only 50%. They studied the intelligence of identical twins who were reared together and who were reared apart. That is, they were staying at the same place. That is, the influence of the society on them was same. Those who were staying apart, they realized that the identical twins who were staying at the same place, reared together, their correlation of their IQ of child 1 and child 2, these two are identical twins, reared together, they are staying together. The correlation is of high order, 89-90%. Then, when these were separated in different environment, even then, the correlation between these two were of high order. Not much of influence of the environment. That simply means that the IQ has a major role to play. In IQ shaping, the major role to play is of genetics. Not environment. This is the essence of the study. If you remember this much, it's okay. Complete study is there, we'll see the table later on, but the essence is this. So cognitivists not only say that what we should study, but also give a prescription of how the whole behavior, how the mental constructs, how the mental processes are shaped. They are not only shaped by the environmental forces, but by genetic forces as well. And from here comes another example or another concept which we have to study later on as well, the plasticity of perception. You see, cognitivists say that our mind adapts to, is flexible enough to make changes in its construction, in its experiences, the processing of information, in order to fit into the changes in the environment. You see, a blind person, blind since birth, who cannot see the world, the neural muscles which he or she has been endowed with does not suit any view in the environment. But once the person is operated, after operation, person is able to see the world. How? Because the mental process is not only shaped by or is not rigid, not only shaped by genetic endowment, genetically the person was blind, if you look at, but after the operation the mind adapted itself to see the world. So the mental processes are not affected only by the genetic environments, genetic endowments, but by the environmental influence as well. Then we have a concept called sensory adaptation. You put your feet in cold water, or you are sitting in a room where there is noise of AC. First day you find the noise quite annoying. After a few days the noise loses its essence. The noise becomes background noise and you are able to perceive stimuli from the environment. The noise has lost its sense because your mind has adapted to it, it has been habituated. Likewise, if you put your feet in cold water, let your feet stay there for quite long time. After some time, you will not feel that it is harsh because your sensory organs have adapted to it, sensory adaptation. These things are also asked in 10 markers and this is enough to explain it. We will see these things in our signal detection theory also, where for people in the classical threshold experiment which came before signal detection theory, when they were exposed to a stimuli, a noise, they were not able to hear. They kept on saying no, 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 and after some time they said yes. There they registered yes. They said yes here. When the intensity of the sound was increased from 90 decibel to 110 decibel, they were able to just notice it. Likewise, in another experiment, when the sound level was decreased, they kept on hearing it, and after some time they said no, I can't hear it. Here comes no. Through these experiments also we get to know that our mental processes are not shaped only by the genetic endowments nor only by the environmental influence, but they both play important role. And mind सबसे बड़ी बात, the most important thing is that mind and perception is plastic. It can change its shape. Plasticity of perception. Perception, the whole chapter is of cognitivist framework. We'll deal with it, but for your better understanding, these things were given by cognitivists. We will see the recent trends in psychology. What is the place of psychology in relation to natural sciences and social sciences, which we've already dealt, but then the application of psychology. These three things we'll see in the next class. And we'll end it here only. Those who have not joined the class, please keep on seeing the recordings. According to the wishes of the students, I kept the duration of the class shorter, and I have no issue taking classes almost daily, on a daily basis. I understand that the offline classes are much more durable because of the content which is given in the online classes are much more. In offline classes there are various things happening because we can see each other face to face. Nevertheless, these classes are equally important. We'll keep the duration lower so that you can learn more effectively and remember most of the things. Thank you very much. Have a good night. We'll meet in the next class tomorrow. The same time, 7 p.m. Tomorrow's class will be obviously longer than this, of course. Then next week onwards, we'll shift to our original timing of 6:30. And as the day progresses, we may make it 6 also, depending upon the comfort of the students. Thank you very much. We'll end the stream here.